She was 84 years old. She had a pacemaker. She had lived in the same house for 5 decades, and in 41 minutes in complete darkness, she was gone. Not wandered, not lost, gone. Taken. By someone who knew exactly how to get in, exactly how to get out, and exactly which roads to take before the sun came up. And tonight, 2 names keep surfacing. 2 men. 2 different connections to the same woman. 2 very different kinds of silence. If you have been following this case, subscribe right now and turn on notifications, because when the DNA results drop, or a suspect is publicly named, this channel will be the first place that video goes live. Hit subscribe. Do it now! And tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching this from? This case has pulled in people from 6 continents, and I want to know where you are. Now! Let's go back to the beginning. Not the version you've heard. The version that starts with a question nobody has fully answered. Why her? Nancy Guthrie is not a public figure. She is not wealthy in any way that would make her a target for ransom. She is an 84-year-old woman living alone in the Catalina foothills of Tucson, Arizona. She has a pacemaker. She has limited mobility. She is, by every conventional measure, not the kind of person a criminal selects at random. Random crimes do not come with preparation kits, and yet the figure who approached her front door in the early hours of February 1st, 2026, carried a backpack. Former FBI agent and forensic analyst Tracy Walder examined the contents of that backpack as documented in surveillance footage and described what was inside as a transport kit. Zip ties, tape, physical restraint materials, not a robbery, not a burglary, a transport operation. Planned, rehearsed, executed. That single detail changes everything about how you read this case, because it means whoever stood on that porch already knew they were leaving with someone. They did not arrive hoping for an opportunity. They arrived with a blueprint. So who builds a blueprint around an 84-year-old woman in the Catalina foothills? Someone who knew she was there? Someone who knew her routines? Someone who knew her limitations? Someone who had time, access, and motive to study her from the inside of a relationship that looked completely ordinary. Stay with me, because this is where the timeline gets surgical. At 9:48 in the evening on January 31st, 2026, Nancy Guthrie was dropped at her front door. The garage opened at 9:50, and the person who dropped her waited in the driveway until she was safely inside before pulling away. That person was Tommaso Cioni, her son-in-law, the man married to her daughter Annie, the last confirmed human being to see Nancy Guthrie alive. 3 hours and 57 minutes later, at 1:47 in the morning, the doorbell camera at Nancy's home was interfered with, and a figure masked, measured by FBI forensic analysts at between 5 feet 9 and 5 feet 10, moved through a gated private entrance with no signs of forced entry. Read that again. No forced entry. Through a locked gate, in the dark, in 41 minutes. That is not a stranger fumbling through an unfamiliar property. That is someone who already knew the geometry of that space. Now here's the question that has been sitting at the center of this investigation since February 2nd. In kidnapping cases, family members and close associates tend to behave in a very specific way. They become frantic. They make public appeals. They appear beside law enforcement. They flood cameras with grief. Annie did that. She cooperated so completely that investigators searched her home and took her vehicle. Her daughter Savannah posted emotional video after emotional video. Cameron, another family member, spoke directly into a camera and addressed the kidnapper by name. Tommaso Cioni has not said a single public word in 38 days. Not one statement. Not one appearance beside his wife during a family plea. Not one sentence directed at whoever took his mother-in-law. Behavioral analysts who study kidnapping cases describe this pattern with clinical precision. Innocent people in crisis seek visibility. They want to be seen searching. They want to be seen grieving. People with legal exposure do the opposite. They answer questions exactly and then go quiet, because every word that leaves your mouth in a federal investigation is a liability you cannot take back. 38 days of daily silence is not an accident. It is a choice. made every single morning. But here is where the measurement becomes critical, and this is the part most coverage has glossed over. The FBI erected a white tent over Nancy Guthrie's front entrance to reconstruct the lighting conditions of that night. Agents wore replica clothing. They ran measurements under infrared. The result placed the figure on that porch between 5 feet 9 and 5 feet 10. Multiple investigative journalists who analyzed photographs of Cioni placed his height consistently near 6 feet. Some assessments put him at 183 centimeters. If those measurements are accurate, Cioni is not the figure on that porch, and that is not exoneration. That is a measurement. And measurements in a federal investigation do not close doors. They open new ones. Because if Cioni is not the figure on that porch, the next question is immediate and obvious. Then who is? This is where Dominic Evans enters the frame, and this is where 19 years of ordinary friendship start to look like something else entirely. In April of 2007, a Craigslist ad in the Tucson Weekly brought two men together, Cioni and Evans. They formed a band. They recorded music. They built a friendship that lasted nearly 2 decades. And for every single one of those 2 decades, Cioni was already married to Annie Guthrie, Nancy's daughter. Think about what that means in practical terms. Every rehearsal, every road trip, every late-night conversation between those two men happened inside the context of that marriage. Which means Evan spent 19 years adjacent to a family. Adjacent to addresses, routines, schedules, security arrangements, and the quiet daily details of an elderly woman's life that seep through ordinary conversation the way water moves through stone. Evans publicly stated he met Nancy Guthrie exactly once, at an Easter gathering in 2011. Investigators are not asking how many times Evans met Nancy. They are asking how much Evans knew about her. Those are very different questions. Now place Evans against the FBI's physical description. Male, between 5 feet 9 and 5 feet 10. Average build. Dark facial hair visible beneath the mask. Former FBI Supervisory Special Agent Jim Clemente identified what appeared to be a marking on the subject's right wrist in infrared footage. Possibly a tattoo. His assessment was direct. If confirmed, that single marker could place an individual into or remove them from the suspect pool entirely. Evans's documented height falls inside the FBI's range. His build is consistent. The facial hair characteristic matches the public photographic record, and then there is the criminal history. Court records from Pima County showed charges attached to Evans's name, including felony burglary. Under Arizona law, burglary is defined as entering or remaining unlawfully in a structure with intent to commit a felony inside. The legal definition and the behavior documented on Nancy Guthrie's doorbell footage describe the same set of actions. In a figure moving through a locked gate without forced entry. Navigating a private residence with the confidence of someone for whom that space was not entirely unfamiliar. Arizona law mandates DNA collection upon conviction of qualifying felony offenses. Burglary qualifies, which means if Evans's conviction produced a DNA sample in the Arizona state database, that profile has already been quietly compared against the evidence recovered from this scene. If it did not match, investigators crossed that specific question off their list. If it did, the silence around this case takes on an entirely different weight. And this brings us to the car. Because the car is where everything converges. At 2:28 in the morning on February 1st, 2026, Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker application disconnected from her phone. That disconnection is a forensic timestamp. It marks the moment she was separated from her device. Either the phone moved beyond Bluetooth range, the device was manually shut down, or she was physically carried past the signal boundary of her own home network. All three scenarios point to the same event. She was in motion at 2:28. At 2:36, a vehicle appeared on a Ring camera on Camino Royale, 2.5 miles from her home. NBC correspondent Liz Croix drove the route deliberately, selecting the back road corridor a driver would use at 2:30 in the morning, when the goal is speed without visibility. That drive took 6 minutes. 2:28 plus 6 minutes is 2:34. The car appeared at 2:36, a 2-minute gap. Retired NYPD Detective Pat Brown reviewed the footage and identified the vehicle as a Kia Soul. A compact crossover. Common, quiet, are the kind of car a person looks at from a window in the middle of the night and immediately stops looking at because there is nothing about it that demands a second look. That invisibility was a choice, and the Pima County Sheriff publicly confirmed the vehicle's timing matches the investigative timeline. Not speculation, not theory. The official position of the lead agency. Now look at where that road leads, because Camino Royale feeds into East River Road, and from East River Road, multiple directions open immediately. North toward Oro Valley, where Cioni lives and teaches. West through residential corridors toward the part of Tucson where Evans lives and works. South toward the interstate. East into open desert, and where a former law enforcement official assessed that a person could remain undiscovered for months within a 5-mile radius. The FBI knows which direction that car was heading. They have not disclosed it. And that silence is not administrative, it is tactical. Investigators stay quiet about directional evidence for one of two reasons. They do not want the driver to know they have the footage, or they already know exactly where that car went and they are building around it. Here is what makes that car significant beyond the timing. The FBI has 10,000 hours of footage, cell tower records, license plate reader data. From the night Nancy was taken, that car does not appear on one camera. It appears on multiple cameras, which means investigators have not just a moment, they have a route, a full documented path from the foothills to wherever that car was going. And somewhere inside 10,000 hours of footage, that car is either on a known plate or the absence of a plate is itself a forensic signal. The DNA compounds this. 2 profiles recovered from the scene. One from a latex glove found 2 miles from the residence, submitted to the federal database with no match returned. One from biological material inside the home, a mixed profile from 2 contributors still being processed. Forensic investigative genetic genealogy is actively running on the glove sample. That process does not require confession. It does not require cooperation. It requires one relative, anywhere in a commercial genealogy database, to have uploaded their profile. One cousin. One distant family member who did an ancestry test out of curiosity 3 years ago. The probability that 2 people involved in a crime of this specificity have kept their entire extended biological family out of every genealogy platform is effectively 0. The tree is being built right now, and when it resolves, when the glove profile maps to a name, and that name maps to a registered vehicle, and that vehicle matches the footage from Camino Royale, the geometry of this entire investigation will collapse into a single point. 2 men, 1 route, 1 car, 1 timeline that the sheriff has already confirmed on the record. Cioni was the last person to see Nancy alive. He has not spoken. The FBI has returned to search his property 5 separate times. 5 visits to the same residence across an active federal investigation is not routine. Each return represents a specific evidentiary objective that investigators have not finished pursuing. Evans's physical profile matches the figure on that porch within the documented FBI range. His criminal history describes the same behavior captured on the doorbell camera. His 19-year friendship with Cioni placed him inside the daily information stream of a family he claims to have met only once at Easter. Neither man has been charged. Neither man has been named as a suspect. What exists is a documented record of publicly available facts that investigators have been assembling quietly since the morning this case opened. The cell tower records are in a federal evidence file. The vehicle footage is being cross-referenced frame by frame. The genealogy database is building a tree that will eventually end at a name whether or not that person ever says another word. And a $1 million reward is sitting on a table in front of every person connected to this case who is currently calculating whether their silence is worth more than that number. That calculation has a history of resolving in one direction. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She has been gone for 38 days. She was targeted by at least 2 people who studied her, prepared for her, and moved her through a locked gate in the dark with transport equipment in a backpack. They left their DNA at her home and on the road. They drove away on a route that is documented on multiple cameras across a corridor the FBI has spent weeks mapping. She deserves to be found. The evidence is not waiting for a confession. It is not waiting for cooperation. It is running through a laboratory in Florida and a genealogy database that grows by thousands of profiles every single week. The car was on camera at 2:36. The glove is in a lab. The cell records are in a file. And the name at the end of that genealogy tree is not hidden. It is just not printed yet. But it will be. Drop a comment right now. Do you think this was a planned operation from someone inside the family's circle, or do you believe there is a third person investigators have not yet made public? I want your analysis in the comments below. This community has been tracking details that major networks have missed, and your perspective matters. Subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video with everyone following Nancy's case. The more people watching, the harder it becomes for the truth to stay buried. We are not done, not until she is found.